Shit, man. I forgot what day it is. Traffic is fucked. Shouldn't have taken Main Street. All of Town Square is a goddamn parking lot with everyone here early to make sure they get a good spot to see the effigy and to double park to their little heart's content. Every idiot came out today. They gather on lawns, storefronts, and at tailgates holding homemade, poorly decorated, never forget, always with us, and we still remember signs, doing their part to not move on. They all might still remember everything, but I wish I didn't. That's why I have to leave. Living here is like, I don't know, being at a never-ending funeral for ourselves. Look, I get it. It was a horrible thing. But come on. We're not the only ones who ever felt tragedy. Maybe our tragedy was a little more specific to us, but isn't everyone's tragedy specific to them? I can't imagine surviving a plane crash, just like anyone who has can't imagine what we all went through. Pain is pain. I'd just rather take action instead of being stuck in a memory. To be fair, I guess it was a pretty unique situation here. 5 years ago, a maniac with superhuman strength, raging bloodlust, a burlap sack on his head, and a gigantic machete blew his way through a summer camp, where a decent amount of the popular high school kids worked, if you could call it that, as counselors, a handful of cops who responded to the calls for help, a neighborhood, that's where I came in, and eventually his doctor/father before being shot 37 times, tangled up in chains, and blasted off a boat via the concussive blast of a barrel explosion into a lake where his remains were never to be found. There might be a bit more I'm forgetting, but those are the broad strokes. As interesting as that is, though, every story gets boring the 100th time you hear it, and I've heard it a million times with a million different variations in a million different formats. Between the news-adjacent reenactments, books, comic books, movies, and podcasts, an alarmingly high number of podcasts of even more alarming quality, I'm more than ready to put it all behind me and never hear it discussed again. It's like people love to live in tragedy instead of moving on from it. Hell, I was ready to stop hearing about it a week into the mandatory counseling that we, as a town, were required to take. They brought in some rich asshole from a big city who said he could help us deal with our shared wounds and collective traumas. A real smug piece of trash who told us to call SACKHEAD our Big Owie instead of calling him, it, by its name. As if, like Voldemort, he would suddenly appear and have at us again with his bloody machete. They'd see us in healing groups, where we'd be asked to share how we were feeling that week and learn how to work through our triggers with the help of role-playing, pillow punching, and scream circles. When one of us felt too much, we were told to hold each other and synchronize our breathing to breathe through the trauma together. It was a lot of the same, so it got old quickly, with the exception of the week a delivery guy showed up carrying a sack of potatoes over his head. In the guy's defense, we did hold our counseling meetings at the church's food bank, and he ended up being a UPS driver simply doing his job. But everyone thought SACKHEAD had returned to finish what he started under the guise of a delivery man. I was able to laugh about it in the moment, but no one else did, so I looked like an asshole, which is something I'm starting to get used to. That's me, the old town shithead. Shithead and SACKHEAD, the most hated. I'm the asshole who didn't join the efforts to find SACKHEAD's body with the failed search parties dragging the lake. Excuse me for not exactly jumping at the opportunity to scuba dive down into muddy darkness where there's a chance I'd come face to sack with my own self-imposed watery death. I'm the asshole who did not care to plow through the woods around town in an arm-locked chorus line like a rocket, anxiously high-kicking his way to the slaughterhouse. Why not just leave SACKHEAD alone? Why poke a sleeping murderer with a stick? Sure, I'm the asshole. The asshole who, from my front porch, watched SACKHEAD split a man in twain from top to tail with one swoop and can still remember the sound it made. It's kind of like a dull paper cutter going through too many sheets at once. After he killed the guy, he looked in my direction as I shrunk back, too scared to meet his gaze, into my house, where I would hide in the attic and wait for help to come. Mentally, I couldn't deal with it then, and sometimes I wonder if I could now, were I not leaving town today, of course. I'm the asshole who immediately put his house up for sale when everything went down because I can't help but see him in every shadow and open doorway when I'm trying to sleep, an activity I've stopped being able to do, except for the occasions where I'm lucky enough to pass out from days of exhaustion. Shit. Move, everyone. Or at least pull over out of the way so cars can pass. What if, God forbid, there was an emergency and the police had to get through? Like, let's say, a gigantic lunatic starts chopping his way across town. Blocking the road in an emergency sounds counterproductive. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the best way to remember and honor a tragic event from the past isn't to set up the ideal situation for it to happen again. We can mourn all we want, but if we're not actively making a change to prevent it from happening again, we're just begging for history to repeat itself. If I am mistaken, my apologies, town. You guys are killing it. Pun intended. Well, if the cars won't get out of my way, I might as well stop in to grab some supplies for my drive out of here. I plan on grabbing something on the road, but I'm barely moving, so I might as well distract myself till traffic clears up. The moment I walk in, dirty looks from everyone in the grocery store because I'm the quitter who gave up on the town. The one with no sense of community because I want to leave and constantly suggest everyone do the same. Community. Are you fucking kidding me? An unstoppable pleasure-killing humanish thing blew a path of destruction through this town. I want to burn it all to the ground and salt the earth, but they're all mad because I want to sell my place? Anyway, it's not like I can sell my place. You think anyone wants to move into a permanent reminder of unexplainable horrors? I say unexplainable, but give anyone here a chance and they'll explain it all to you in great, almost fetishized detail. They'll consider it an honor. Perhaps if the potential buyers aren't into my place, they could look at some lovely tropical property in Jonestown, or consider house flipping H.H. Holmes's quaint murder castle. On top of my home being a crime scene, when Sackhead was on his rampage, he went down into my basement and hacked away at some load-bearing beams, so I'd eat the cost of replacing those. Did I get away with my life? Maybe, but still, an unexpected cost is an unexpected cost. Speaking of, why is one non-plastic boxed water more expensive than a 6-pack of soda here? Every time I try to be green, it bites me in my wallet in the ass. Pisses me off, but it's in the cart nevertheless, so I can get the hell out of here. There's only one checkout lane open, which also pisses me off, but fortunately it's empty. Finally, a win. Makes sense though. Everyone in town is at the community cry fest, trying desperately to be seen and feel like part of something bigger than them. Like an even sadder Coachella, where the headliner is a giant statue of a murderer instead of Radiohead, and people are crying from improperly processed grief instead of bad Molly. The checkout clerk and the baggers see me and look at one another, tisking their tongues with disgust like a couple of irritated parrots. "Oh, doing your shopping right now, huh?" one says without looking up, as he slides each one of my items across the counter as lazily as possible, before carelessly tossing it toward the bag. "Yep, today was the best day for me to hit the road for my new job, so you gotta go when you gotta go." The bagger's eyes swell up with tears. "Show some respect, mister. My brother was killed on Heroes Day." Heroes Day is what we voted to name. Yes, there was an actual vote. The day Sackhead had his little wild to-do in honor of those who bravely went so the rest of us could live. Gross. The bagger begins to weep and the checkout clerk hugs him in an attempt to synchronize breaths like the big city asshole taught us. I drop what is likely too much cash. I don't know what the boxed water will end up costing. Quickly bag the rest of my items myself and make for the door. As I reach the sliding glass, I hear the clerk comfort the bagger by proudly proclaiming, "Don't listen to him. He's not part of our community anymore. God, get me to my truck and out of here forever." As I slam my tailgate shut, I hear his words echoing after me. Community! Not in my head, I mean, but rather the clerk is standing in the door yelling, "Community!" at me. That's funny. It's not like we were all close before Sackhead came. Everyone was as nosy, self-righteous, and judgmental as you'd expect from small-town folk. Now, everyone holds eye contact for too long while softening their eyes and doing a shitty, we're in this together, right? Smile and nod. Some even wink. Also, everyone was involved, even if they really weren't personally affected by it in the slightest. Everyone acts like it happened in their backyard when, in reality, most of the town was nowhere near the destruction. Hell, some people crying day after day didn't even know about the tragedy until the following afternoon. For example, the Petersons were vacationing at Tokyo Disneyland on Heroes Day. Yet every year, they talk about how they felt it happen from all the way in Urasayu, while they sat in the goddamn enchanted tiki room watching birds sing with mouse ears on their heads and Dole Whips in their hands. Heroes Day. Yes, some real heroes went that day. A moment of silence, please, for dear Chet Henley, the anachronistically homophobic quarterback who burped his promposal to the nerdy girl he was only asking out as a classic goof with his disgusting buddies. Let us light a candle for the brave Donovan Gilardi, the quiet juggalo who would sit on the bridge and shoot at passerby with a BB gun weak enough to never break the skin, but powerful enough to sting like hell before heading home to tape cats together. An artist! The bagger boy who just chewed me out? You should remember his brother's heroism as well. To be clear, he wasn't killed by SACKHEAD, though he did die the same day from suffocation as he hid between the walls of the girls' locker room and computer lab. They found his body a couple months later when the smell came through the vents, interrupting a class of freshmen hard at work learning how to make GIFs. These are our heroes. These are the heroes we should remember all year, every year, and on this day for the rest of our natural lives into the great beyond. I say beyond because now we're not sure if SACKHEAD proves the existence of God, the devil, and, for lack of better words, a spiritual force of nature. That was an unexpected side effect to all of this. I mean, the guy got shot a ton, sank like a stone, and, as far as we know, walked away. That's not natural, and I don't know what I believe. How's that for a moral conundrum? I wasn't murdered by a monster, and now I might believe in God, or, at the very least, ghosts are real and can possibly hurt, murder, or touch me as their final task on this plane of existence? This sucks. That sucks, this town sucks, and this holiday sucks. Is it still a holiday if the thing we're remembering is tragic? Seems weird to use a word that is synonymous with vacation for something that's a real downer. Anyway, this town sucked before and it sucks more now because I'd honestly rather people be for real rude like those idiots at the grocery store than fake nice. It sucks so much that I am willing to leave my house and just deal with it later. Maybe I won't even deal with it. Maybe I'll just own a house in a murder town until it's old and falling apart, at which point it can become a lair for some future psychopath who will rip his or her, but statistically probably his, way through the town. A murderous lair with French doors in the foyer and chopped up support beams in the basement. Good luck getting it up to code, you maniac. A break in the traffic opens up ahead, thank God, who I now believe in and thank just in case it helps. If I can carefully get my nose around these gawkers and make for the highway, I can hit the open road before they light up the effigy. Oh, I forgot to explain that. Every Heroes Day, they build a giant sculpture of SACKHEAD, which they cover in gasoline and burn to the ground while chanting, "We will not forget," to signify the town's lack of fear and collective strength in the face of our big owie. Every year, they pick a different survivor to light the gasoline trail with the torch. This year, the proud torchbearer will be the 92-year-old librarian who was asleep when everything took place, though she is still thought of and referred to as the oldest living survivor of the attacks. By this logic, as someone who was a baby during the first Iraq War, I demand people salute me, remember my struggles in the crib, and give me free food every Veterans Day. Right as I'm about to put the town square out of sight and leave all this shit behind me forever, I see Agnes, guessing the librarian's name since I don't know her, feels like a safe bet though, being carried half toward the giant sackhead like an old virgin sacrificed to an angry volcano. She's too frail to hold the torch, so naturally it keeps slipping from her hands, but they keep handing it back to her, expecting this time to be different and looking shocked when it isn't, creating a living diorama of the definition of insanity. In equal parts frustration and simply being over it, Agnes manages to kick the torch in the direction of the line of gasoline. The slow line of fire makes its steady way towards the effigy while the crowd watches with hungry eyes. That song is on the radio, so perhaps that's why it comes to mind. Cheering the fire on and pulling at each other with furious glee. As the fire reaches the foot of the statue, it erupts into flames and the crowd cheers, "We will not forget! We will not forget! We will not forget!" Most of the crowd cuts off their cheers when a flaming machete flies through the burning sackhead and into the chest of Agnes. Later, when the dust settles, Agnes will be named the oldest victim of the Big Owie Part 2. The oldest living survivor will be the other librarian who is too sleepy to go to the vigil. I will call her Agnes Part 2. Everyone is confused as Agnes falls straight backwards with the burning blade sticking out of her. I could hear them audibly blinking if my music wasn't so loud. It's the Dirty Dancing soundtrack, which I will not play quietly. Their shock hasn't yet subsided when Sackhead smashes through his colossal, flaming twin and lands next to Agnes, pulling the flaming machete out and holding it up like a lightning rod. Their shock is subsided by the time actual lightning strikes his blade and causes his arm to glow an incandescent blue. The enormous crowd scatters, slamming into one another and running for their lives as Sackhead starts slicing and dicing his way through a mob of people who, moments ago, were screaming about how they weren't afraid while drinking Bud Light hard seltzer. He twirls and slides like a lineman ballerina, spraying blood with each swing and tossing people like tissue paper. Over the music, I can hear everyone screaming for help as far-off sirens approach. I can't help but to think a quick "I fucking told you so" about the fact that they will inevitably be blocked from getting through like I was a short while ago. Perhaps the police will stop at the store and get the third degree from the deceased pervert's bag boy brother like I did. I almost smile at the thought of that bag boy getting it, but I am pulled out of my revenge fantasy by a man banging on my window, pleading for me to help him. How? What do I do? If I stop to let him in, I could risk myself getting killed. If I don't let him in, the lack of morality could keep me out of God's sweet, sweet garden that I, as of now, have most certainly secured a ticket into. I don't really have to make the choice though. The sackhead grabs the man's head and turns it all the way around like an overachieving owl. The body falls to the ground and there he is, staring at me, arm burning with red and blue fire. From a purely aesthetic standpoint, I can't help but to think, whoa, cool. Am I desensitized? We stare into each other's eyes and moments pass. Nothing. Last time I saw him, I shrunk back in fear, unable to process him. This time, I don't know, but I don't feel afraid. I feel like I expected this to happen, and that expectation dulls my fear. And then, I slowly, sorta, shrug. I shrug because I don't know what to do. I shrug because I knew this could happen, told people it could happen again, and was hated for saying it could happen again. I shrug because I begged the town to take action instead of just talking about it. I shrug because I don't know how to process this and need to do something. I am not afraid of him. I am resigned to him. So, I shrug. Sackhead doesn't move, doesn't breathe, if he even needs to. Then, he slowly shrugs. In that moment, we get each other. We both hate this town. Who knows his experience, but it couldn't have been better than mine, and I hate it. Did we create this monster? If you pulled his sack up, would his face expose the worst parts of us that came together to create the very thing that destroys us? If we know this evil exists, but do nothing to prevent it from happening again, do we somehow want it to happen again? I don't want it, but I can't force that choice on the others, so I do what's right for me. I slowly let my foot off the brake. No gas, just a slow and steady slide forward while I see the carnage unfold around me, like a fucked up version of It's a Small World. Petersons know what I mean, if they're still with us. Sackhead turns back around and resumes his destruction of the crowd that can't believe it's happening again at the festival custom built for it to happen again. I don't bother with stop signs since I can't imagine a cop giving a shit right now and floor it for the highway. Other vehicles are racing around me, some going out of control and crashing, others going so fast my truck can't keep up. In this moment, I am thankful that I already had my life packed up and ready to go. I am also thankful that I had the common sense to prepare for this eventuality, even though it's hard to feel proud or smug after everything I've seen. Twice now. Hey Baby by Bruce Channel is now playing. The Dirty Dancing soundtrack is hard to beat, but I slowly turn it down until it clicks off. Where do you go after the worst has happened to you? Again. Where do you go to feel safe or normal in a world where this sort of thing is possible? How do you move forward? How do you hold a job, check your credit score, or learn piano? How does anything or anyone matter when at any second, the scariest, most horrible and fucked up thing can come shrugging into your life and have itself a field day? How do you plan for a future when this is a constant possibility in the present? How does anyone care when things are so very, very bad? I can't find an answer, so I shrug. I shrug and I keep driving. Slowly, the other vehicles from my town are gone and the road is empty, save for the periodic appearance of a car that has no idea who I am or where I'm coming from, where I've been. I see families singing road trip songs, teens staring at their phones instead of the road, and truckers blaring their horns at them when they recklessly swerve in and out of lanes. More preventable deaths waiting to happen. I stop at diners and gas stations where I say nothing. What could I say that would help? Call the National Guard? Call the Army? Help? Anyone who could help has already been called at this point. And I would just add to the noise of somebody should do something. So I just drive. I drive and I think of how to keep living. I make my way west towards the new job and, hopefully, a new life of non-permanence that's waiting for me there until I die and go to heaven. I'd originally wanted to be an architect, but now, I don't know. Time is limited, and investing a ton of it into any one thing seems silly, now that I know that these big owies are waiting around every corner. I'd rather just experience life until the inevitable happens. Someone, something, or something violently rips it away from me. That's what's so attractive about this job. Like everything in my life from here on out, it's going to be temporary, in a place where temporary is normal and expected. I've accepted a job for the winter at a hotel. The only things I'm responsible for are making sure the boiler doesn't shut off and walking the grounds once a night to make sure no one breaks in. I've never been to Colorado, so I'm interested to see what it's all about. Excited even. I turn on the radio and let the light slip away. Hey, hey, baby, I wanna know if you'll be my girl